Some stories are never finished. They're just filed away. Welcome to Chronicles of the Obscure. Imagine the date, February 25th, 1942. The world is at war. Just a few months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, fear hangs heavy over the California coastline. Los Angeles is a city holding its breath, shrouded in a mandatory blackout. The nights are dark, tense, and quiet. Until tonight. At 2:25 a.m., the silence is shattered. Air raid sirens wail across the sprawling city, a terrifying scream that yanks thousands from their beds. In the darkness, powerful searchlight beams slice through the sky, hunting for a target. They cross, converge, and then lock onto something extraordinary. Hovering silently over the coast, high above Santa Monica, is a large, slow-moving, silvery object. It glows, impossibly calm, in the focused glare of the lights. Then the world explodes. The U.S. military opens up with everything they have. The night erupts with the thunderous roar of anti-aircraft artillery. For the next hour, a relentless barrage of over 1,400 shells is fired at this single, unidentified target. The sky is lit up with flashes of fire and smoke. But the object doesn't fall. It just endures. Below, on the darkened streets, chaos reigns. Shell fragments rain down like deadly metal hail. Buildings are peppered with shrapnel. Fires break out, and in the confusion and panic, 3 civilians lose their lives, with several more dying from heart attacks. Then, as dawn approaches, the object is gone. Vanished, no wreckage is found. No enemy aircraft is shot down. All that remains are questions, immediate denials from the very officials who ordered the attack, and a secret file stamped unexplained. This is the story of the Battle of Los Angeles, a real, terrifying, and chaotic military engagement that officially never happened. To unravel this mystery, we have to open the evidence locker and look at what was recorded that night. Let's start with the timeline. The tension was already at a breaking point. Just hours before the sirens in L.A., a Japanese submarine, the I-17, had surfaced and shelled the Elwood oil field near Santa Barbara. It was the first direct attack on the U.S. mainland in the war. Nerves were frayed raw. Then, at 1:44 a.m., military radar picked up an unknown contact, about 120 miles west of Los Angeles, heading towards the city. The alert was sounded. Now for the visuals. This wasn't a fleeting glimpse. Thousands of people saw it. Air raid wardens, police officers, and civilians staring from their windows all described a similar sight. A large glowing object, sometimes described as a silvery lozenge, moving slowly and deliberately. It wasn't zipping across the sky like a fighter plane. It drifted, it hovered. It seemed to stop and hang motionless, completely caught in the crosshairs of dozens of searchlights. The famous, controversial photograph from that night, published in the Los Angeles Times, shows exactly that. A shape illuminated by converging beams, surrounded by the bright pops of exploding shells. The military response was anything but hesitant. The 37th Coast Artillery Brigade unleashed a furious barrage of 12.8-pound anti-aircraft shells. This wasn't sporadic, panicked firing from random positions. It was a coordinated, concentrated effort with multiple batteries tracking and firing on the same single target for over an hour. The sheer volume of ammunition used underscores how seriously the military took the threat. After the firing stopped, the physical evidence on the ground was abundant. Over 400 shell fragments were recovered from city streets and buildings. But there was no foreign metal, no piece of a Japanese plane, nothing to indicate an enemy craft had been hit. And then came the official record, which is where things get truly strange. The morning after the attack, Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox held a press conference and dismissed the whole thing as a false alarm and war nerves. Just hours later, the Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, contradicted him, stating that as many as 15 unidentified planes may have flown over L.A., but then his department quickly walked that back, too. The final official report from the U.S. Army concluded the entire incident was triggered by a lost weather balloon, magnified by the psychological stress of war. A single weather balloon. This brings us to the theory board. Let's start with theory number 1, the official explanation. Mass hysteria and a stray balloon. The idea is that a weather balloon released by a nearby station was picked up by nervous radar operators. The searchlights locked onto it, and jumpy gunners, still on edge from the submarine attack, started firing. The explosions of their own shells in the sky were then mistaken for enemy aircraft, leading to more firing, creating a vicious cycle of panic. The problem with this theory is massive. Experienced artillery officers on the ground insisted the object they were firing at moved against the wind. It changed altitude and speed. They claimed it took direct hits, without showing any damage or falling from the sky. Can a simple balloon do that? Can it withstand 1,400 artillery shells? It seems highly unlikely. So let's move to theory 2, a Japanese reconnaissance craft. This fits the context of the war perfectly. Maybe it was a lone, high-altitude Japanese plane or one of their rumored Fugo balloon bombs sent to test American defenses and gauge their response time. The secrecy and subsequent confusion from the U.S. government would make sense if they were embarrassed by an enemy penetrating so far inland. The issue here is the lack of evidence from the other side. Post-war analysis of Japanese military records shows no lost aircraft over the U.S. that night. Furthermore, Japan simply did not possess the technology for a silent, hovering aircraft capable of withstanding that much punishment. A conventional plane would have been shot to pieces. This leads to Theory 3, a secret U.S. prototype. What if the military wasn't shooting at the enemy, but at one of its own? Could it have been a classified American experimental aircraft, maybe an early drone or some kind of advanced radar reflector being tested, that went off course or malfunctioned? This would explain the frantic cover-up and the conflicting stories. The military would have every reason to hide the existence of a secret weapon and to conceal the fact they almost destroyed it themselves. It's a compelling idea, but after decades of declassification, no record of a prototype matching the object's description or flight characteristics has ever emerged. And that leaves us with Theory 4, the unexplained phenomenon. This theory posits that what the military encountered that night was something truly unknown. The object's reported behavior, its silent hovering, its slow, deliberate movements, its ability to survive a massive artillery barrage, doesn't fit any known aircraft of the era. These characteristics are, however, remarkably consistent with thousands of later UFO reports from around the world. In this scenario, the military genuinely encountered something beyond their comprehension, and in the midst of a world war chose to cloak the event in a clumsy story about war nerves and weather balloons, rather than admit they were powerless against it. The case was officially closed in 1942, but the questions never went away. In 1974, when the U.S. Air Force's famous UFO study, Project Blue Book, was declassified, the Battle of Los Angeles was listed, but the cause was still cited as a weather balloon. Then, in the 1980s, the Freedom of Information Act brought new documents to light. Memos between high-level officials revealed deep confusion and concern in the days following the event. One particularly tantalizing FBI memo from 1942 mentioned that the Army had recovered an unidentified craft, a claim that was, of course, later denied and dismissed. Modern investigators argue that the sheer scale of the response, the coordinated radar tracking, the targeted searchlights, the sustained artillery fire, is proof that this was no balloon. You don't fire over 1,400 shells at the wind. The legacy of the Battle of Los Angeles is that it's a perfect case study in how national security, public panic, and a truly unexplained event can collide, leaving behind only fragments of the truth. In the end, the Battle of Los Angeles is so much more than a simple UFO story. It's a story about fear, secrecy, and the limits of an official narrative. It forces us to ask a difficult question. What does a government do when it encounters something it cannot identify or explain, especially during a time of total war? Do they tell the public the truth and risk mass panic? Or do they create a cover story, no matter how flimsy, to maintain a sense of control? The evidence strongly suggests that a real physical object was in the skies over Los Angeles that night. But its origin, whether it was foreign, domestic, or something else entirely, remains one of the 20th century's most compelling and unnerving cold cases. What do you believe was over Los Angeles in 1942? A balloon, a secret weapon, or something from beyond? Share your theory in the comments below. And for more journeys into the lost and unexplained, make sure to subscribe to Chronicles of the Obscure. Thanks for watching.